Labour returned to dialogue with the federal government. Of course, that's on the back of the president's commitment to address all the requests put forward by the Nigerian Labour Congress. Welcome to Business Daily. I am Yusuf Akogu. We take our business top stories. Glad to have you back. Now we quickly give you updates of the stock market trading as it went down yesterday, Wednesday. The market closed positive, indeed, defiling the protests yesterday all over the country. Closed positive there, 0.12%. Of course, the volume of trade 0.784 million volume of shares, valued at 4.269 billion naira in a day. Was one of the least that we've had in recent times, 6,251 deals. Of course, in terms of market performance, the gainers on the table, of course, have the like of NASCON, of course, doing 10%, of course, on the day to close at 35 naira 75 kobo. Of course, Abe also closing positive there at 10%. It closed 1 naira 21 kobo per shares on the day. Of course, 10% also Shams ended on the floor on Wednesday to close at 99 kobo per shares. On the losers table, we have of course Thomas WY is also closing negative there. Of course, 10% it went down to close at 1 naira 17 kobo. Tip also closing negative 10%, 72 kobo. It ended on the now. Of course, UPL completing the top three losers for the day. 2 naira 49 kobo the share close, losing 9.78%. The top traded equities, indeed, Transcorp Nigeria PLC traded 58.8 million volume of shares, and of course FBN Holdings trading 28 million volume of shares, and of course EcoBank Transnational 48.8 million volume of shares traded. Of course, the rest of Africa also largely not so completely in red, but we have a Joburg in South Africa down 0.76%. In Nairobi, the stock market closed negative as well, 1.01%. And of course, in Ghana, the market ended flat on the day. Indeed, these are the performance of the market across the continent based on what happened on Wednesday. Of course, as usual, the market is on right now. Trading sessions are on across the markets all over the continent, and of course, as usual, we'll bring you up to speed as the trading progresses. But for now, we'll take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll go into our discussion. Glad to have you back. It's still Business Daily right here on Trust Television. Now we go into our discussion. Yesterday there was protest by the Nigerian Labour Congress and of course the Sisters Union TUC yesterday. Of course, that protest, we want to look at it whether it has achieved its aim or not, because at the end of the protest yesterday there was a meeting between the leadership of the unions and of course the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and they have agreed to return to the to dialogue. With the federal government. To discuss instead of continue to protest on the streets. And I have joining me in the studio the Deputy President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade Kabiru Sani. Glad to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Will you say the protest has achieved its aim?
Well, good morning, our viewers and listeners. Let me start by saying so far so good, and obviously the protests have started yielding fruitful result to us, because as you rightly said, immediately after the protest, that is few hours, there was a meeting between the leadership of the NLC and TUC and Mr. President, and there were so many commitments that we feel that if that commitment were made, obviously we have made progress.
Indeed. Now you're back on the negotiation table as it is right now. Don't you think the protest in the first place was misplaced?
Well, it was not misplaced because Labour was forced to go for the protest. Negotiation is the best in terms of any dispute. But unfortunately, we were forced to do that. If you could remember, after the withdrawal of the fuel subsidy precisely on 29th of May this year, when Mr. President himself made the pronouncement that subsidy is gone, I think the labor unions in the country, who always speak on behalf of Nigerians and the workers and pensioners in the country, make their own input. And unfortunately, government does not listen to us until when we make a threat that we are going on an indefinite strike action. That was when government now went to court and give us a restraining order, and at the same time set up a committee for dialogue. We agree on that. We went for the dialogue. We sat down with the steering committee. We held so many meetings with them, and at the end of the day, subcommittees, or what they call technical committees, about 5 of them were made. But unfortunately, due to the legislative action of the subcommittees, because I can tell you vividly that even some of the committees out of the 5 committees set up have not even met once. And we agree at the steering committee that whatever we will do as that will make an impact to question the effect of the subsidy removal will be completed on or before 8 weeks after the inauguration of that steering committee. But unfortunately, even the steering committee was not inaugurated. So I think that is what forced Labour to now back out, or to make another threat that after 1 week we will start this protest. And if you could remember, the last committee set up by the federal government and the negotiation is on the 517 naira per liter.
530 naira.
530 or 517. I know that is above 500. But unfortunately, while the negotiation is ongoing, then government also increase the pump price again to 617 to 620.
But I said that was influenced by market forces.
Well, that is why we also said, let us go on the protest so that we can see who are those market forces. Because to us, we don't even know who are the market forces. But as I said earlier, we did the protest yesterday, and thank God, we are very happy that despite the insinuations that the protest will be hijacked by talks across the country, we give the security agencies assurance that as Labour is an organized organization, and we prove ourselves, because the protest, from the report we are receiving, is peaceful across the country, and here also in Abuja. And we had a commitment from the National Assembly, and the commitment have started yielding effect, because they promised us that they will get back to the Mr. President between yesterday and today. and we were able to get up to the president yesterday, and we get some commitment.
Indeed, and indeed there was commitment. But again, there was a summon later yesterday from the courts, summoning the leadership of NLC, accusing you of contempt of court, that there was a court bar you from going ahead with the protest.
Yes, that is why when we started the peaceful protest, our first place to stay is the Federal Ministry of Justice to make some pronouncement before we proceeded to the National Assembly, because we believe that the discussion and the court order is on the 517. But now we are talking about 617. So it's a two different case. We obey the court order of the 517, which said that we should not go on strike of any type. And we are not going on strike.
Even though it's your right.
Yes, even though it's our right, but we believe that let the court preside and decide on the next line of action. If we are not satisfied with the judgment, then we can appeal. But this one is a different case. So to us, it's not court contempt, but they also sent another letter to us yesterday, and presently there was National Executive Council that is ongoing, and we will discuss on that, and we'll take the next line of action.
And indeed, your own lawyer too, Mr. Femi Falana, has indeed said that no court in the land has the right to bar anybody from going on the street.
Of course, it's the right of Nigerians and the right of the workers, in as much as the protest is peaceful. So even the security agencies, you don't need to get any permission from any security agencies, but just to notify them of the route you are following, so that they can also maintain security and order to ensure that the protest was peaceful.
Now, let's look at the commitment now that Mr. President made yesterday.
Yes.
With the labor. There was the issue of fixing Port Harcourt refinery before December.
Yes.
How does that come to you?
Yes, it's a very nice development, because we have been pressurizing that the only solution to the issue of PMS is to fix our refineries. But we made a pronouncement that we were disturbed that even during the speech of Mr. President, he has never talked about the fixing of the refineries. But to our own end, we vividly agree that fixing our refineries is also another answer, because in as much as we are producing our PMS here, then obviously the cost of production will reduce and the price of the PMS will also reduce. So I think this is a very good development, and we hope that apart from the Port Harcourt, the other refineries, Kaduna and Warri, will also look into often, and even maybe providing another new ones, because obviously they will assist. And the other alternative of using CNG, this is also a very good alternative, which if there is conversion of our cars to CNG, which is more cheaper than PMS, then obviously that one will also help, because majority of people will prefer using CNG, which will provide the same services with PMS and is more cheaper.
More cheaper. And the president also made a commitment.
Yes, he made a commitment that he will make pronouncement very soon.
A workable plan by next week.
Yes.
So how confident are you?
Well, we will continue to follow it up, because to get a commitment from Mr. President himself, I think, is something very tangible, and we will continue to follow it up. And even the committee that was set off, that was handling the issue of negotiation with Labour, he also promised that he will immediately restructure the committee, and the Senate also requested that they should be part of the committee. So I believe that there will be much more engagement with the government in this direction. Okay,
there is also the issue of wage, is it wage review or wage award?
No, it's a wage award, because we challenges that a minimum wage is a product of legislation, and it is supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. And the current minimum wage of 30,000 is supposed to be reviewed next year, 2024. So we said, in as much as we are going to have a review of the current minimum wage next year, then obviously it has to be a minimum wage award. This is just to cushion the effect of the subsidy removal, and is an interim measure. So the Mr. President agreed that he will set up a committee on that. It will look at the current minimum wage, and then an award will be given, and there will be a timeline, and that will not stop us from proceeding with the review of the current minimum wage by early next year.
Okay, for Nigerians that want to know the difference between review and award, what will you tell them?
Well, as I said, award is just a temporary measure. Because if you could remember before, we have what we called Odoji Award. It has been done here in this country and is in the history of this country. And during the last COVID-19 pandemic, also, I believe the federal government on its own decided to increase about 40% of the salary of every worker of the federal government, which that one can also be considered as an award. And this one also, depending on the level of discussion with the government, we can agree on a certain figure which can be added to the minimum wage, and that one is an award. It can be taken from now to the time of the review of the minimum wage, current minimum wage, so that once the discussion of the current minimum wage comes off, then that one will be static, that will be across the country also, and that one will be reviewable in the next 5 years.
That's indeed interesting. Another issue you also raise or demand is the issue of cutting down the cost of governance.
Yes.
And I also I know that you met with the leadership of the National Assembly yesterday. The chief whip was there, and of course the senator from the Federal Capital Territory did address you yesterday.
Yes.
And they also ask you to give them 1 week within which to put some modalities or framework together to address some of the requests that you have made. The issue of cost of governance, what commitment do you think you have in that regard, or what are your expectations?
Well, our expectation is that, let me first and foremost thank the leadership of the National Assembly for giving us the assurance and their own commitment that they will also do the needful. And as you rightly said, they make this commitment on public, and all the Nigerian workers, the Nigerian masses are looking upon them. So I think the cost of governance is also another issue that needs to be addressed in this country, because you cannot be talking to somebody that he should be tightening his belt, and while you are losing your own, I think it's not fair. So that is why we said they should also look at it, both from the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, because for somebody to be having a kind of convoy, to be having so many number of special advisors and so on, if you cut up those cost of governance, it will also be used in another direction to improve the lives and living of all Nigerians. So I think they should also sacrifice, as we the workers who produce the wealth of the nation also sacrifice. So together we can develop this country.
Indeed, together we can develop this country. And indeed, they have given you their commitment.
Yes.
But it depends on which areas do you want them to cut down.
Well, that depends on the discussion we will hold at the committee level, because we will go on with our presentation and they will also come with their own presentation. And we will look at where we think that the cost should be reduced. And obviously, at the end of the day, we will reach a resolution for between the two parties.
Okay. Now, let's look at now the strike to some extent has been suspended.
Yeah, not the strike, not protest.
I mean the protest,
yes.
Sorry. You're back to the negotiation table as it is right now. In the event that your requests are not met, what then would be the next line of action? Well,
as you rightly said, the leadership of the two labor centers, the NLC and the TUC, already have made commitment, and the protest has been suspended yesterday. And presently, as I said, there is National Executive Council that is ongoing, which will ratify the decision. But mark the word, suspension. Suspension is different from withdrawal. So it's like we have suspended it for a little, and we will watch out and see the development. And at the end of the day, if there is no any development, then we will reconvene and decide on the next line of action.
Okay, before that protest yesterday, the president spoke to Nigerians ahead of that, sensing that the NLC was bent on going on the street to demonstrate. He came out to tell Nigerians, look, this is what I have on the table. Is it that you were not satisfied with what the president was putting forward?
Yes, of course. I think after the last meeting we held with the federal government.
Because you released a statement after the speech.
Yes. I said on the last meeting we held with the federal government is that they appealed to us that we should wait and hear the the statement of Mr. President by 7 p.m., that we should reconvene the following day by 12 so that we will take an action. But the President of the Congress and the other two Labour Center, TUC, make vividly a pronouncement that we are not satisfied with the statement of the Mr. President because it's promise upon promise. And to us, it has to be 3 measures: the immediate measures, the intermediate, and then the long-term plan. So there is an actions that need immediate attention of Mr. President. But as I said rightly, we are happy that Mr. President here borrowed from our leaders, and he made commitment himself. So let's wait and see, especially for the issue of fixing our refineries. You can see that Mr. President have not talked about the refineries. And when our leaders discussed with Mr. President, he gave an assurance and commitment. And we will continue to watch out from now to December, which we believe that if Port Harcourt refinery is fixed from now to December, obviously something good will
happen. Now, talking about fixing refinery, this is not the first time we are getting this kind of commitment. I recall it was in 2021 or 2022, the former Minister of State for Petroleum, Mr. Timi Presiva, did say that by December of last year, the refinery was going to, Port Harcourt refinery was going to begin, production. Because as it is right now, the Warri refinery, Kaduna, and of course Port Harcourt, they are not producing anything. And of course, the rates of overhead that we are spending in that place is also a huge cost on the nation. So what do you make of this commitment? Do you think we should take the president by his word?
Yes, of course. I think part of our demand is even that issue of pronouncement. As you are saying, I think it's in 2022, that certain amount of money, I couldn't remember, but it's about 250 billion naira was earmarked for fixing the refineries, and nothing good comes off. Absolutely. So we even demand for an investigation of that money, because nothing comes off from that. Everybody can testify that. So there is a difference from the first administration and the present administration. This is the first time we have an engagement with Mr. President, and this is the first time as a sitting president that he also make this pronouncement. So let us wait and see. And the president of the Pengasan and the president of the Nupeng will vividly be part of this process, and they will continue to be monitoring, and Nigerians also are monitoring. So let's take the words of Mr. President and see what will come up from now to December.
Indeed. Now, as we wind down now, let's talk about the issue of trusts. It appears that Nigerians have lost confidence in leadership of NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress. Many have accused you people of selling out.
Yes, this is a usual question that we used to answer from the press most times as Nigerians. And if you look at so many rumors that is coming out of the social media even before the protest, that even some Nigerians are not convinced that the protest will take off, because they are saying that we are waiting for 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. that we will suspend it. There was even a statement that the General Secretary have said that they are reconsidering suspension of the protest, which at the end of the day, Mr. President of the NLC gave a press statement at 9 minutes that the process will still hold. So I think it's good that we should trust ourselves. We know that whatever we are doing it for the good workers of Nigeria, the pensioners, and the general citizens of this country. So let us establish a trust between the people and the leadership of the labor centers. We want to assure them that we will continue to engage government, and whatever we will do, we'll continue to do it to the best of our ability, and let them give us a benefit of doubt. That is it. Okay, so
what are you doing now to regain that trust?
Well, I think the holding of this protest is also an answer.
Some say it's just a show-off.
It's not a show-off. We'll continue to follow it up. It's not a show-off. Because people have even accused us of that the protest will not hold, and it holds. So it's something, it's a step forward. So obviously we'll continue to engage. And there is something that the people doesn't understand on labor or industrial relations between employer and employees. It's not, we are not going on strike or protest for just the purpose of that we have gone on strike, or just for the purpose that we have gone on protest. No, it's a threat that we want to call the attention of your employer to do the needful. So if your employer did the needful, there is no need for going to strike, because we know that in every industrial action, whether strike or protest or sit at home or whatever, it has its own negative consequences. So obviously nobody wants to go on strike until when it is necessary. So I think people should understand that when we give a threat, it's not necessary that that threat has to be completed. If the needful comes up, there's no need for going that.
To proceed on strike.
So I think they should have a knowledge of that. And there are some governing laws that we as labor leaders are also operating upon. We have the International Labor Organization conventions and charters and so on, and we have our own labor act. So we have to follow it up.
Absolutely. Comrade, I must thank you for your time. Quite an interesting conversation we are having. You've been able to clear some issues there. I must thank you, Comrade Kabiru Sani, Deputy President, Nigerian Labour Congress, for your time on Business Daily. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
With that is a wrap on the show today. Join us tomorrow for more. I'm Yusuf Akogu.